Claire, this computer's logged into your GroupMe, so don't be alarmed. I'm sending the link as you to council. Yes.
Like Christine, for example, and try to send it over to SGA, and then they have to do the same thing.
Yeah, so I switched around a couple times. I almost switched again.
Did the whole thing.
I was this close to switching.
I'm pretty sure if that's like.
Actually, I just every other university has like engineer, CS, like requirements.
Yeah.
This is the only school in Ohio.
Oh, really?
So,
That's
yeah,
different though.
yeah, totally different route. Yeah.
So you stuck with it?
You're good.
I did stick with it, yeah. I'm in the process of studying. That's exactly what I'm doing. How's the Google Hangouts coming along?
I think. Oh, I see Robert. Hi.
Hi.
Robert, did you post the one to watch?
I'm doing that now.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Be ready.
Thank you.
Yes, Robert.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good. I'm all right.
1 month till we get our test score. My score went down between practice test 2 and practice test 3, so that was cool.
It's
Thanks
okay.
for that.
It's okay. It'll happen.
It'll be probably fine.
Fun fact, Michael Skiles came into Massage Envy last week and he got a membership. So I can hook it up for you guys too.
Okay, we need 3 more for forum.
I don't think Bethany or Allie are going to be on today unless they decide to show. But they're both like.
Totally fine, totally fine. And there's your, there's only 2 more. 2 more. Okay, so we're gonna join the ladies. Okay, open up Eduardo and or Julia.
I think they're both in town.
Yeah.
Julia needs a proxy tonight, so she has somebody joining virtually.
Oh,
There she is.
That's my appointment to join. Thank you.
How many do you have right now? 5?
Oh, if anyone wants chocolate, thank you. I gave away too many. That's me yours. We're at 6. We need to.
Is William leaving?
Yes, this'll do.
He's on vacation.
What about Vaughn? Is it Vaughn?
Yeah, I don't know if he's coming.
No.
Yeah,
Do they usually come?
not Vaughn. Roy's usually here.
Roy is usually,
Yeah,
but Vaughn is.
but he may come a few times just to like
I just waved.
be present as the new.
Yeah, 'cause he just
SGA.
gave us our budgets, so
Oh, okay.
I was thinking that he.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'll just go with SGA. you have any idea when the budget breakdown is due, or is that a question for you?
No, I mean, there's not necessarily a due date because everything's gonna be in your accounts already.
Well,
It's
yeah.
just a matter of like when you need to
Where
start
you want
spending it. So I would say if you have any events or anything coming up where it would be in a specific account that you need
Got
to
it.
spend from, then you wanna just do it before that.
Cool.
Yeah. But he can help you, look at whatever the breakup was last year. And then
Yeah.
you can probably
He
base
sent
it.
me that, and I'm meeting with my finance director tonight, after council meeting to like break it down.
Mhm.
Cool.
Jessica said she's coming, so as soon as she gets on, we should be good to go. And Serena also said she's joining, but is figuring out the technology.
Okay, tell me about it. This is like the lowest finance to be seen box. Like, thank you. How do you think? My personal one, it's like. All these things.
Okay. Let me just double check. I got it. Great. I call this meeting to order at 7:07 p.m. Okay, so Ryan is running a little bit late, but when he gets here, he will send around the attendance sheet. He's coming just a little late from work. Okay, we're gonna move into the approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda for tonight?
I would like to strike the burden advocacy grant presentation.
No worries. Can you just do that in one of the next few meetings?
Yeah, I just haven't been able to connect with my back director.
You have so many other things that are like completely fine. Yeah.
Can we start FSC officer? Sure.
Oh, and do our proxies in the room want to introduce themselves? I mean, I know you've been here before, but if you want to.
Hi, I'm Danny. I'm proxy for Jake.
Oh, hello, what are you?
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm proxying for Julia today.
Oh, for ARC, great, okay, awesome. Jordan?
Can I strike last?
Sure.
Thank you. Sir, wait, why do you have this? Are you trying to do it? Nice.
Any other amendments to the agenda?
Hi, can I strike general fund report?
Strike it, actually?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Strike general one. TSR striking 2.
Nothing with my commissions.
Okay, so as of now, the amendments to the agenda are striking the rural advocacy grant presentation, striking general 1 and general 2 officer member reports, FSC, TSR, and SWC officer member reports. Any other amendments to the agenda?
Can you strike the report for the academic affairs commission?
Sure. Any others? Last call. Great, okay. So just all those amendments I just listed plus AAC. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll motion to approve the
Second.
Okay, cool. So Jamie makes a motion, George seconds. So we're going to do the full roll call beginning with IVP.
Sorry, I think we need to approve the previous minutes before we do the agenda.
We can't do agenda first and then minutes.
We can. It's just not listed that. It's just not listed that way.
Okay,
So-
sure. We'll just table that motion then for now, and we'll do minutes first. Okay, so we have, if I'm not mistaken, 3 minutes to approve.
Yeah.
We have June 26th, July 10th, and July 24th. Do we all feel okay to vote on the July 24th ones, even though they were just sent out this afternoon? I know they were kind of short, so I'm feeling okay, but I don't know.
June 26 already get approved.
Huh?
June 26 already get approved.
Oh, they were approved, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess we just have the 7th one then.
July 7th.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes from our July 7th meeting?
You like
Or July 10th, I'm so sorry. Is there 7/10 is the minute, okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the July 10th meeting?
Yeah, I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, George. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Was that Jessica?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll do a vocal roll call for the approval of the July 10th minutes, beginning with IBP.
Yes.
EVP? Yes. General 1?
Yes.
General 2? Yes. General 3 is not here. AAC?
Yes.
SWC?
Yes.
TSR?
Yeah.
I have a vote of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 to 0, motion passes, and the minutes from July 10th meeting are approved. Okay. Oh, hi Serena, cool. Do we feel ready to vote on the minutes that were just sent out today from our last meeting, or do you want to table those until next meeting?
They were pretty short.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
I feel it.
okay. George, would you like to make a
Yes, I'll
motion?
motion to approve the meeting minutes for July 24th.
Bell will second. Okay, so we're gonna do a vote to approve the minutes from our last meeting, July 24th, beginning with IDP.
Yes.
EVP? Yep. General 1?
Yes.
General 2? Yes. AAC?
Yes.
CAP?
Yeah.
SWC?
Yes.
TSR?
Yes.
Great, by a vote of 8 to 0, motion passes and the minutes from the July 24th meeting are approved. And we've already done June 26th, okay? So now we will go back to our motion to approve the agenda for tonight. We already had a motion by Jamie, a second by George, so we'll just move into the roll call again. IVP?
Yes.
EVP?
Yes.
General 1?
Yes.
General 2? Yes. AAC?
Yes.
CAC? Huh? Sorry, you cut off.
Yes.
Yes, okay, cool. SVC?
Yes.
TSR?
Yes.
Great, by a vote of 8 to 0, motion passes and the agenda for tonight's meeting is approved as amended. Okay, so we're going to be doing public comment, but it does not appear that there are any members of the association here. Brandon, are you making public comment? Okay, he's an appointment. Okay, so seeing as there are no members of the association here to make public comment, we will adjourn public comment at 7:13 p.m. Okay. So the next section of the meeting is appointments. As has been pretty standard, I'll go ahead and read the descriptions of each appointment. Our first appointment will be Karen to the campus programs committee, and then our second appointment will be Brandon, who's over there to the ASUCLA Communications Board. So give me just a minute to pull the appointment descriptions. As a reminder, these appointments, because they're over the summer, are only interim appointments, and so we do have to technically vote to reapprove them in the fall. But again, that can all be done via consent item, and we can figure it out from there. Just a quick reminder. Okay, so Deal, would you like me to reread the description for CPC as we've already appointed a few folks, or do we feel like you remember what CPC does?
Still real quick.
Okay, thanks, George. Okay, the Campus Programs Committee is a subcommittee of the Programs Activities Board. CPC provides funds for student-initiated, student-organized, cultural and educational programs that take place at UCLA. The target audience for these programs should be UCLA. The exception to this are events that bring youth and/or community college students on campus for educational and outreach programs. These programs can apply to the CPC Youth Programming Fund for support. Solicit student views on the nature and goals of campus programming, and holds hearings to allocate funds for campus programs. The rest of it is just participating in the 6 yearly hearings beginning in September, attend quarterly meetings, mandatory summer retreat, etc. And so as a reminder, this is a stipend position. 2 positions have already been filled by Les Alvarado and Jerry No, if you remember that from our June meeting. So this would just be 2 supplements. Karen, are you ready to join us?
Yes. Sorry, one sec.
Awesome. And hopefully everybody has had the ability to review her application and her resume. Any questions that you have, you can ask her. So unless there are any questions about CPC, we are going to let Karen begin with her opening statement. Whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen. I want to first start off by thanking all of you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. A little bit about me. I'm an incoming sociology transfer student. I'm looking to kind of go into speech pathology right now. That may change. I don't know yet. At my community college, I served as a senator of activities. I also served in the last year as the vice president of organizations for the Associated Student Government at my community college. I was president of a club while I was there, and I also served as a student ambassador for the Multicultural Center. I've served on multiple governance meetings. These range from things like academic affairs, where we kind of figured out the schedule of the next few school years that were coming up, and then also things like environmental affairs, where they kind of talked about like the physical environment of the school. These experiences have kind of led me to see the importance in student government and the student voice. So yeah, I'm really excited to share my experiences with you guys and the future vision and the goals with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. Are there any questions? I will start. Oh, yeah, sure.
You can't see me, but you can hear me, I hope. I'm one of the administrators to student government. My name is Deb, and I'm wondering, as you transition into UCLA, where you're going to be on a quarter system, as opposed to the typical semester system, what strategies you would be putting in place to balance the fast-paced academic program with this type of extracurricular commitment?
So I think that, first of all, this is kind of like the only thing that I'm going to be really focusing on for my first quarter, because I do want to like make sure that my academics are in place while also being really involved. But I think that, yes, it will be more fast-paced, but at my school, like I was taking 15 to 19 units every single semester. So I was like well over full time, sometimes even more than that. And I was involved with way more things that I'm going to be here at UCLA. Like I had my position as the vice president, and then I had my position as the chairperson for the interorganizational council. And then I was president of a club that took a lot of time. And then I was also a student ambassador at one of the centers on campus. So I think I kind of like have gained the study skills that are needed to be super involved while also being like a good student. So, I mean, I think that it could be a challenge, but I'm excited to like take that challenge and kind of learn a lot of things about myself through the like shorter semesters, I guess. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will ask another question then. Can you speak a little bit to your past experiences and how they prepared you for this position?
Okay, well, I did mention like a couple positions that I was in, but definitely the one that I was the most passionate about, and the one that kind of like was the most rewarding, and the one that resonated with me the most was when I served as vice president of organizations the last year. With that came not only me being like the leader for my committee, which consisted of 4 other people, but also came with the challenge of being in charge of all of the 60 to 100, depending on the semester, student clubs and organizations that were active on campus. With that came everything. So I had to basically pay attention to every single club, whether it had to do with their outreach. So we handled all of their social media, all of their flyers. We would handle their events. I did have a lot of knowledge about events because I did come as a senator of activities when I was elected into my position. So basically, any event that they wanted to have, that would kind of go through me. I would work hand in hand with them to make sure that what they were doing was kind of meaningful to not only their club, but to the students on campus. And then when it comes to funding, which is kind of what CPC like focuses on, we had 2 different ways that we would fund the clubs through us. And then through the associated students as a whole, there was another way. We would fund them basically once through supplies and then once through events. And they would send us a budget breakdown, a very detailed budget breakdown of what they wanted to do for the event, what supplies they needed for the event, how much it was going to cost, what day it was going to be. We handled like all of their requests when it came to activities like that. So I think that I gained the exact skill set that's necessary to be a part of CPC because I work directly with student organizations, with student programs. Things that were going on campus were constantly going through me. And I constantly had to think about things like budget, funding, how are we going to get everyone to be happy with what they were getting? So yeah, I think that I'm definitely like ready for the things that come through CPC because I've had so much experience with it, even from the side, as me being club president and kind of having to like sit down and be like, I'm the vice president of organizations, but I also need my club to be funded. So I have to apply through myself and kind of like, I don't know, like taking a step back and like allowing myself to see things from that perspective as well, although I was vice president. So I've literally seen it like from every angle. And even as a member of the associated students, like part of what they funded as a whole was the center that I was a student ambassador for, the Multicultural Center. And I would sit in on the Multicultural Center's governance meetings, and they would constantly be talking about like, how are we going to be funded? And that went straight through the associated students, which meant that as an executive member, I had a vote on what would get funded. And I was super passionate about the Multicultural Center. But again, like I had to think about it from both the perspective of the Multicultural Center and also through the associated students. So yeah, again, like I've seen it from every angle. So I think that that's really important when it comes to CPC and funding student programs, because although you do want to have like a community on campus, which is my main goal, it's also important to know like how the funding process works, which I think that I have a lot of extensive experience in.
Thank you so much. Any other questions for Karen or last? What do you just ask?
Karen, did you have one?
Normally, but
Never mind. I thought you were cheating.
Great, then it sounds like there's no other questions. So Karen, if you want to give your opening statement or your closing statement, I'm so sorry. Feel free to do so whenever you have a chance.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. This is something that I'm really, really passionate about. It's something that I've like constantly been involved in. I was also in ASB in high school, and then I came to community college, and I decided that although like it's a 2-year transition process, I didn't want that to be something that kept me away from such amazing experiences that were available to me. So I really, really took advantage of that. I was involved anywhere that I could be involved, and I hope that I was able to like convey that this is something that I really think that I not only have the right skill set in, but I'm also someone who's extremely passionate about it. So I think that that's definitely something that's necessary for the position. And yeah, just thank you guys so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Awesome. So before we open discussion, as per norm, ARC, would you like to say? Robert, go for it.
Yeah, so ARC, it was for both appointments today, it was me, or it was Jessica, Aisha, and I. And for this appointment for Karen, we voted 3-0 for approval. And I'll just give what I said first. Her dedication to student outreach and community organizing was already really apparent, obviously, through her work through community college. And our only concern was that transition and being new to UCLA and having to go through the transition through the semester system to the quarter system. And it was funny because Karen actually brought that up herself in the interview and said how she would be able to manage her time, devoting herself to CPC and making sure that she's giving her due respect to the position. And then just overall, I thought that she has an idealism that a lot of students at UCLA don't have because of their time of getting kind of, I guess, worn down there, but also a lot of real experience through her previous work at community college that I thought would make her effective on CPC.
Great, thank you, Robert. Aisha?
Yeah. Hi. So during the interview yesterday, I think I was really moved by the amount of passion Karen had, and with that, a couple of things about when we asked her questions about reaching out to students and things like that. There were very specific ideas which while we were having our discussion later on, we were confused about how they might play out when it comes to UCLA. But then the fact that she has those experiences coming in from community college and then has the ability to kind of work out how that might work for UCLA, considering that both the places would be different. But the fact that when you have the right kind of direction, and then I mean, at least I thought that even though both things wouldn't be exactly the same, but then her experiences coming in would provide her a lot of a head start towards getting involved with things the way she wanted to. And then obviously her knowledge of the position she was applying for, Jessica actually asked her how she found out about it because she was really interested. I think she can talk more about that. But then the fact that she was very proactive in terms of finding out, even though maybe our process of hiring and things like that at USAC might not be that available to transfer students, but the fact that she went on, was super proactive about it, applied for the position without even having started, was also gave kind of another edge. So yeah, I voted yes.
Great, thank you so much, Aisha and Jessica.
Yeah, kind of going off what Aisha said, I did ask the question too because of how difficult it can be to find these appointments as transfers, and I was really impressed with how Karen took the initiative to not only learn about the organizations on campus that she would be interested in, and even though she had a difficult time navigating them, she did everything she could to get connected and figure out what she could to get started, and I think that passion means a lot, especially for this position. Besides that, it's pretty much what they both said as well. Karen is really experienced at her community college, and although the transition is different from community college, from my own experience, I believe that taking 15 to 19 units and having all this experience in community college is definitely going to be easily translated when she transfers over to UCLA, and I don't really have any concern that she won't be able to commit her time, especially because it was something she brought up before we even asked. So I voted yes because Karen's very well qualified and I think she's very passionate.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just echo all that as well, I think that not only is Karen's resume stellar and her passion incredibly apparent at all stages of this process, but my office and I are very committed to filling more appointments with transfers because, as Jessica and Aisha mentioned, sometimes it's difficult for transfers to get involved in these spaces due to lack of awareness, whatever that is. And so finding someone that was not only incredibly qualified and passionate, but also a transfer, I really think is what set Karen apart from our applicant pool. So with that, is there any discussion? Is there a motion on the table?
I motion to approve Karen for the Canvas Programs Committee.
Thank you, Bella. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jamie, great. Okay, so we will move into a local roll call vote, beginning with IVP.
Yes.
EVP?
Yep.
General 1?
Yes.
General 2?
Yes.
AAC?
Yes.
CAC?
Yes.
SBC?
Yes.
And TSR.
Yes.
Great, by a vote of 8-0, the motion passes, and Kiara is appointed to the Campus Programs Committee. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us virtually, and I'll be in contact with next steps.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Okay, great. So next up will be our ASUCLA Communications Board appointment, Brandon. Before he goes, I'm just going to go ahead and read the position description as well. He also served on the board last year, so if you have specific questions, I'm sure you can answer them as well. The ASUCLA Communications Board was created to support UCLA student-run media. From its beginnings in 1919 as the Publications Board, which was responsible for a campus newspaper and yearbook, the Communications Board today oversees 10 media titles and several websites that involve more than 600 students during the year. ComBoard is a student majority board made up of 8 students appointed by the undergraduate and graduate governments at UCLA and representatives from the university, alumni, and faculty, as well as other at-large members, many of them alumni from the fields of journalism, marketing, and law. The board meets its mission by providing training, facilities, and financial management to student media through its oversight of the UCLA Student Media Department. The board approves and implements budgets, selects editors-in-chief for the media, and sets top-line policies for the organization. Student editors and managers make all the editorial decisions of the board's newspaper, magazines, yearbook, and radio station. And there's just more information about the specific standing committees as well, if you all have any questions about that. Great, I hope you all got a chance to review Brandon's application and resume, as well as the letter of recommendation that I sent around from the incoming chairwoman of ComBoard, Mona. Yeah.
Claire, is this a 2-year appointment?
Yes, this is a 2-year appointment, and because a member that was appointed, I believe, last year ended up graduating early, we actually have 3 openings this year. Generally, there are 2, so hopefully Brandon plus 2 others will be appointed. And those are, I'll tell you more of my officer member report about updates for those. Yes, yes. Any other questions about ComBoard? And as a reminder too, it's similar to ASU's Board of Directors in the regard that oversees one of our 4 departments, which are USAC, GSA, Services and Enterprises, and Student Media. So that kind of helps to conceptualize it. Great, okay, so Brandon, without further ado, if you want to get into your opening statement when you're ready.
Hi everyone, my name is Brandon Rakeem. I'm a rising sophomore this year. I'm a public affairs major, and I'm excited to be back. I was up for confirmation back in February. I was confirmed, and I joined the ComBoard in April for the rest of the year. So I didn't spend too long on the board, but I had enough time where I had the opportunity to meet all the members. I'm currently on the board, build some relationships, and appoint all of the current editors-in-chief for UCLA Radio, the Daily Bruin, the Yearbook, and the 7 News magazines. So I come from a journalism background. In high school, I was editor-in-chief for my newspaper, and last year I joined Ha'am at the beginning of the year as a section editor, which is the Jewish news magazine. I really enjoy journalism. To be honest, I miss being on staff, but I feel after 3 months on the board that I saw more to contribute, and I'm more than happy to share some ideas that I have for how the board can move forward in a time when journalism is increasingly moving online, our advertising budgets are shrinking, and we need to figure out ways to keep our campus publication sustainable for the long run so generations to come can enjoy and benefit from the material they provide to their communities. So thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
Do you have any questions for Brandon? I guess I'll ask you the ball rolling a similar question to what I asked Karen. What are some past experiences and perspectives that you have from serving on the board, and how have those kind of informed what your goals are for this year?
Yeah, so one thing I really enjoyed about the communications board this past year is that it's really a very consensus-driven board. So even when we have disagreements over, like, we brought editors up for all their hearings and everything, and we had to ask them questions similar to this, and then we would discuss, and there were times where we would all disagree. Basically, by the end, on almost every single one. We got to a near unanimous or unanimous decision. So it's really, even though people might have their reservations, I think it's really taught me like the importance of building relationships and trying to come to a conclusion about what the best way to go forward with the publications are. As to other previous experiences, at the beginning of my term, I had the opportunity to meet with several of the publication heads. Specifically, I went to La Gente. They were finishing up an issue, and I got to sit in a little bit, talk to their editors, see how they were doing with their publication. I talked to Nomo's head at one point, Fem. And so I feel I have a good sense. And also during the hearings, I obviously met all of the new editors. So I know the visions that they have for their publications and sort of how they're doing in terms of staff size, capabilities, etc. So I feel having this experience will definitely help me hit the ground running in the fall, working with Mona and the other members of the board to make sure our publications stay strong.
Going off that, the experience you had on the board, what's like one thing that you would want to improve in the upcoming program?
Of like the board's operations or like my own?
You can take that however you feel you want to answer it. Just in general.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I'd say, as for myself, coming in so late into the year, you're sort of limited in what you can do because the agenda really is predetermined somewhat because we have to get appointments through for the next year, and that takes a lot of the time, and we have to finalize budgets, not add new things or change previous things. So in terms of that, having October through April will be very helpful. Besides that, as for the board itself, I'd say that right now we're at this point where we're actually doing pretty well financially compared to the last several years, but in the coming few years, we're gonna have to make decisions about online media taking a bigger role because advertising revenue is declining, and that's sort of inevitable. It's across the industry. There's really no avoiding that. So how do we keep the nature of the publications alive and allow the editors to do what they want to do while still being fiscally sustainable so that in 10 years, people will not only get to see maybe a print edition, but actually see all of the publications still in existence. I think that's the most important thing that we have to remember because I love newsprint. Like I was on Tom and I did journalism in high school. Like I dealt only with newsprint during those years. But at the same time, I realized like it would be very unfortunate if we didn't have a product to share with the community because there just isn't the money to do it. So I think we really need to make sure that in the coming 2 years, we start to ask these questions and hopefully come to a happy medium where everybody's on board and even though it might be difficult to do.
So on your application, it seems like you're going to be involved with 2 positions next year, one with BPU and then one with the UCLA School of Law. It says you're fairly certain you're going to be.
So with BPU, I'm currently on BPU.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
So if you were to take those roles, how will you juggle this new position along with your 2 other positions that you're holding as a sophomore?
So in regards to BPU, as of now, because I haven't if I was gonna take a role that required significant more responsibility, I would know by now. So the likelihood is it's gonna maintain the same level or maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less from like my previous year responsibilities when I was already on the communication.
Okay.
So I definitely don't think last year was fine, so I don't have a reason to believe that this year will be any different. In regards to the School of Law, that's mostly like it's not a 9-to-5 job because I'm not working every day, but it's like 10 hours a week. I've also decreased all my other commitments for this year, so I don't really see a problem. Plus my classload was insanely, it was terrible. But so this quarter I don't see a problem because most of our communications board meetings are during the evenings anyway. We meet once a month for the board itself, and then I also meet personally with all of the editors, like from time to time. And then we also I was on operations committee last quarter, which is the committee that meets with all the editors and some selected board members, and we just ask what else can we do for you, that type of thing. And that means like on the off weeks of the normal meetings. So I don't see a conflict there because I'm decreasing other things and I'm just staying the same amount.
Any other questions? Let me just ask our virtual friends. Not solved questions today.
It says that your major is poli-sci on here. Is that just like incorrect?
I'm sort of up in there because public affairs is this new major on campus. I don't know what I'm getting into. I mean, I know what I'm getting into, but like, I don't know what classes are going to be like in the fall. So depending on that, how it goes, I either will be a poli-sci major or a public affairs major. We'll find out.
This is like one of like the 5 minors that I've gone through in my time at UCLA. You want to talk about my time as a math minor? Another time. 3/4 of calculus. We'll talk about another time. I'm not kidding. I love calculus. Okay. I do. Anyway. Okay. Any other questions for Brandon? Brandon, thank you so much for your time. Do you want to give your closing statement?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to thank the council again for meeting with me tonight. I hope I've thoroughly answered all your questions. Again, I really think these next few years are significant because I've been able to sit in on the budget meetings, and within 3 or so years, the advertising revenue is really going to get to a point where we won't have it, at least according to projections. If things could change, but if things continue on the path that they're going, it looks like we're going to have to make choices. So during my term, I'd have to make some decisions about online media. I think the biggest thing that we need to do, and I've talked to editors about this, is that we don't sufficiently provide training to the publications there's an orientation to join any news magazine or news publication at UCLA, and right now online is basically, I mean, it might be mentioned during a meeting, like this is important, but it's not really discussed thoroughly. So trying to bring more attention to the necessary training and also increasing communication between news magazine editors in chief, because right now, besides our operations meetings, they don't really talk to each other that much. I think that will also be important. So I hope I've answered everything, and thank you so much for being with me tonight.
And I will turn it over to Robert to talk about ARC's verdict.
Yeah, for Brandon, we voted 3-0 for approval. I'm gonna like turn that up because I can hear myself. Actually, I'm just gonna take these out. He has a lot of experience, obviously, from last year serving on board, and also I really felt like he had a passion for the problems he was talking about, especially about online media. And he didn't really just identify the problem. He was really forthcoming about his proposed solutions, like training, which he brought up at the interview as well. And just beyond that, I think that his ability to balance the clubs that he was in last year, looking at his resume, while still being on board, was really beneficial too, because it shows he can do the job, which is our job at ARC, just to show that they're able to effectively carry out the job that they're doing. So that's why I voted yes.
Great, thank you, Robert. Aisha?
Yeah, hi. Okay, similar to what Robert said, I think another thing that I really liked was the fact that while he was talking about the whole transition to like online media, he also mentioned that like as soon as he got his position in like late April last year, if I'm not wrong, he made an effort to reach out to like all the different news magazines, and that only include like Daily Brewer and the bigger ones, but like all other smaller magazines too, to meet with the editor-in-chiefs. Although he didn't get a really good response, but he was still able to meet with like most of them, with those who responded. And I think that shows a lot of initiative from his part, considering that joining in the middle of the year, he made that effort. I'm very positive about the kind of efforts he would make, considering that he would like start off at the start of the year. having sat on appointments already, I think that kind of like gives him the edge in terms of like knowing all the editors in chief, just because like he sat through those interviews. So I really think that this experience that he had in the past couple of months, coupled with his passion, he also talked about how he was a part of HAM, and that kind of like was like proved to be his passion towards moving towards this. Which basically, I mean, for me, coming from a publication yourself, and which wasn't like Daily Born, and something was like a smaller magazine, kind of like shows how he would understand better the problems that might come with. So I think for all those reasons, I chose to what it is.
Thank you so much, Aisha. And Jessica.
Yeah, and for Brandon, his passion for media is definitely very clear, which I thought was very important. I also thought him sitting on the ASUCLA Communications Board already was a big, I guess what Aisha said, edge, because he's already had a few months to I guess, not only have some experience within the position, but now he has a plan for the future, because I know one of the questions we asked was, what do you have anything different that you plan on this year that you didn't do last year? And he not only has a plan, but he's very much excited to carry out these plans. And overall, I think his passion and him being on the ASUCLA board that's why I said yes.
Thank you so much. With that, if there's any discussion or motion on the table, feel free to put it forward. Motion to approve Brandon for ASUCLA Common. Great. Thank you, Bella. Is there a second? Thank you, George. Okay. So we will move into a vocal roll call vote, beginning with IVP.
Yes.
EVP? Yep. General 1?
Yes.
General 2? Yes. AAC?
Yes.
CAC?
Yes.
SWC?
Yes.
And TSR.
Yes.
Great. By a vote of 8 to 0, the motion passes, and Brandon is appointed to Comm Board. Congratulations. Thank you for joining us tonight. Brandon will be the shift covered Hollywood Bowl, so really cares about. So we'll be in contact soon. Thank you so much again. Have a good night. Wonderful. So now that appointments are done, we're going to go ahead and move into our special presentations. We have a few of our funding presentations tonight, and we'll take a consent item vote on those next week, like what we're doing about things tonight. So just pay attention to these and feel free to ask any questions at any point. So Brian, I believe you have the first two presentations. You don't have to stand up if you want to. You can present from there.
So this is the how to fill out a requisition. This was actually created by SGA. I did not make it full disclosure.
Right. The camera. That might make it backwards.
Yeah, I think it
I think Robert sent it out to everybody.
Yeah. And maybe just pull it up on their computers maybe.
Okay, so in case you haven't ever seen a rec, this is what it looks like. This looked like that for a very long time. All right, that's okay. Do you want me to do it?
Oh, sure, if you want to.
Okay.
Here, seats.
So here's just a couple recommendations to help the whole process go faster. Obviously, please write neatly. The gray boxes are for SGA, don't write anything there. Don't use erasers or like whiteout. If you make a mistake, just create a new rec. Black or blue ink is preferred. And you can put as many expenses as you want on a single rec. You don't need to use multiple recs for different line items. It will help you get your money back faster. Just always make sure you're checking the budget report to make sure that there are actually funds in the account you're trying to access. So we're going to go briefly through all the different sections of the rec. The first is where you put the preparer's information. So whoever's preparing the rec, their name, phone number, and email address would go there. And also the date that they're preparing the rec, not the date that the event was, the date that the rec was prepared, please. That's about it for that. This is the payee's information. So in the case that you're filling out a reimbursement, this would be whoever paid the expense already. If you have an invoice or a purchase order, it would be whatever company you want to pay. Cash advance, it would be whoever the money's going to be going to, full legal name, the address is required, and don't use an on-campus address unless the check is written to your organization's name. Section 3, that is for SGA, please leave it blank. Section 4 is the name of your student group or your office, and then your 4-digit group and department number. That's available on SGA's website. I can send everybody links to all of the group numbers later. So this is section 5, what action to be taken, and it's, just check whatever you're asking for, reimbursement for disorder, things of invoice. Okay. So purchase order, basically, you're charging SGA directly. Reimbursement is you're trying to pay someone who's already paid for the expense. Cash advance, you're trying to get the money in advance. When you're doing cash advances, whenever you pay for the expenses, you need to go back to SGA and show them your receipts. And if you purchase less than whatever the cash advance was, you owe the difference. So that's important to know. The payment of invoice is a direct payment to the vendor, and honorary payment is basically just to pay the former speaker you might have. The nature of the expense, again, this is just informational. Delivery options, this depends on who the payee is, what their preferred method is. A lot of times, if you're doing purchase orders or invoices, they're going to ask you to mail that to their office. So sections 8 through 10 are all the purchase details. Basically, just a summary of all the expenses you're asking for. You don't need to break down everything in your receipts line by line. You can just put, however much money you spent from one place, like Ralph's, and then however much you spent from Staples, things like that. So this box right here is, however much money you're asking for. And then below that, requisition total not to exceed is how much money you have available in your budget. So just be aware of budget report and make sure you're checking that. Section 13 is again informational, just the name of your event, the location, the date the event was. That's important. So this is probably the hardest part of the whole requisition. What confuses students the most, it is the account number. They have a nifty little guide on how to figure the account number out. I'll show that to you, hopefully. Okay, so the entity is always one. That's us, Undergraduate Students Association. And 2 is just GSA. I'll send this PDF to everyone as well, but basically, you just need to match these numbers up. The fund, which is the leftmost number of the account code, then division, then your department goes in the middle, then this is the expense account, the event account. It's just, it's important that the account number is accurate, otherwise your requisition will be delayed. Signatures, so you need a student group or the commissioner to sign. Typically, the finance committee and me needs to sign basically every requisition unless it's coming from CPO, then you need to get those signatures. So your rec is complete now, and...
Wait, go back to CPO, what were you saying?
Oh, it's just the signatures. For a lot of the different, I think like CPC and different funds through SOL and CPO, I do not have to sign those. But basically anything from your office budgets, contingency, I would have to sign that.
Sure.
So these are just, this is some advice to help the processing of your requisition go faster. Please staple all of your documents. Don't use tape or paper clips. Don't staple your receipt to a piece of paper and then staple that piece of paper to the requisition. That just makes things confusing. So for reimbursements, you basically always need to have a receipt. If you don't have a receipt, then you need like your payment history from your bank website or wherever you might find that, or printed checks, not just a picture of a check, it needs to be a printed check. They're pretty strict about this, so make sure you do have proof of payment. An invoice, this is pretty straightforward. You're always going to get the invoice from whatever company you're dealing with. Cash advance, whatever estimates you can find. A lot of times people use Amazon. Vendor quote, same thing. Typically they will give you purchase orders, they'll give you a quote that will be very clear. Honorarium. So there's actually two different honorarium agreements. I think one is for $2,000 or less, and there's a more extensive one if you're paying the honorarium more than $2,000. So just be aware that there are two different ones, and you need to submit the correct one depending on how much you are paying the honorarium. So this is just some advice for additional documents. If your requisition is for a conference or retreat, make sure you have an agenda, list of attendees, statement of purpose, and any type of graphics or t-shirts you might have. There needs to be like an example or a sample. Here are some common mistakes that SGA sees pretty often. An invoice is not a receipt. If you're asking for a reimbursement, make sure that you have the actual payment details. Receipts must be the originals. They do not allow scanned copies, and they're very strict on that, so make sure you are submitting your originals to SGA. Don't modify your receipts in any way, and when you're paying for these expenses, but even before you fill out a requisition, avoid paying with cash because it just makes everything wonderful. What to not include with your rec, these are pretty obvious. Do not include a copy of your credit card. Don't include the funding application or the budget report. They have all that information. I don't know if you've all filled out the signatory form yet with SGA, but that needs to be done as soon as possible. You don't need to make a presentation out of it, no cover page necessary. And if you don't put a sticky note that says rush or advance, they're typically busy all the time and they will get to it whenever you submit it. If you want it to be, if it's emergent, needs to be done quickly, go talk to them directly. So thank you, that's pretty much it. These are the different mailboxes you can submit them into. Typically it always goes in 58 unless you're using BOD or CS Minifund. But wait, we're not actually done yet. So these are just some helpful links. There's a problem rec register that they update, I think almost every day. It has a list of requisitions that have not been processed because there are issues. If the account number is wrong, the proof of purchase is not good enough. There's also a check register that has a list of all the recs that have been processed and a list of checks that are available for pickup or that have been mailed to whomever was selected on the requisition. They don't put the information about purchase orders online, so you need to either call or go there directly to find that out. If you have any questions, reach out to them, the information is here. Or of course me, but this is not my email. I haven't used that email in a very long time. So I think everyone has my email. Okay, that's it. Sorry for the rush.
Good. Can you talk about signing your own recs? Like if it's a reimbursement, you can't do it. I'm allowed to. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought that was the one.
Yeah, I know someone had said that last year, but because I have to sign it, and they're always going to audit it, so it's not like when you sign it, it's just a check.
So if I pay for something, I can sign I don't have to have my finance director sign it. Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
It might be, I don't know, better for the transparency, or I'm not worried about that. But that's fine.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ryan? Okay, thank you so much. You can all say everyone. That was his first presentation. Second one will be on contingencies, like we've been going over all the funding guidelines and processes. This is kind of going to go over contingency. Also a reminder that we're still kind of negotiating our budget, what we kind of want to do with student contingencies. So this is something maybe to keep in the back of your mind if we decide to merge student and contingency, what we might want to revise or add later on.
Who's eligible? Any student group registered with SOL, that includes all of your offices. With any and all programming events are available to apply. Applications are accepted continuously. There's no hearings, but we ask that you submit your application 3 weeks before your event. That deadline is flexible, but if you want to receive a budget and allocation well in advance of your event, it needs to be 3 weeks before. So the first, basically, I'm just going to go through all the items that we fund. First is advertising in the Daily Bruin and different news magazines. The maximum is $500 per program. For graphics, which includes informational cards or anything like that that you might make for an event, it's $300 per program. All of the designs have to include a paid-for by USAC logo, and there is a link there that helps you access more information regarding that. For facilities, the maximum allocation for that is $750 per program, and facilities includes any kind of expenses associated with the venue, so rental, staff, all of that is included in facilities. For honorarium, it's limited to $600 per program, and this includes the cost of the honorarium's travel and hotel stay. And a performer can receive honorarium a maximum twice per quarter. We're going to be documenting that, letting SG know. We can make exceptions to this rule, so if there's some, an honorarium you would like to opt for a third time in the quarter, just please communicate that with us. So the Nexus Hospitality, which is basically just food. The maximum allocation for food is $500 per program. If you're having students or any minor, basically, I think we're legally required to feed them, so there are exceptions to that rule in the case that there will be minors attending your event. Parking, up to 2 parking spaces can be paid for per event. For retreats, the maximum allocation is $500, and each group is allowed 2 retreats per quarter. For travel, we basically base it off the IRS charitable rate, which is 14 cents per mile. If you have registration fees for any kind of conference or event you're going to that's outside of UCLA, the maximum possible allocation is $500 for that. In addition, if you need to pay for hotel stay, which I don't know that I've ever seen anyone apply to continuously for hotels, but the max allocation is $450. That's 3 rooms, $150 per night. Van and air travel, it's more analyzed on a case-by-case basis using the IRS charitable rate, which this again is 14 cents per mile. So discretionary, this allows me to fund programs with up to $700 each without council approval. This is mainly because in the past there have been, especially last year, a number of cases where council did not meet quorum, and because council didn't meet quorum, contingencies didn't get passed, in which student groups lost out on funding. So that's why this is here. And of course, in the case that I would use the discretionary powers, I would notify all of you. This is about summer contingency. Basically, the maximum you can receive over summer is $1,000 per event. Exceptions. So exceptions will be given to all of the line items that are inherent and essential to the program. So basically all of the funding caps I've talked about so far. There can be exceptions, but typically we do not allocate above the amounts listed. The criteria, basically all allocations are made without regards to viewpoint and will be made solely on viewpoint neutral criteria. Requisitions need to be submitted within 14 days after the day of your event. So and for everyone who has their own funds, please make this clear in your application as well. 14 days after the event, they need to submit the requisition. This is different, it used to be 30, but we recently did this mainly because SGA experienced an incredible volume of requisitions the last couple weeks of spring quarter, like hundreds of requisitions a week. It's crazy, and that's it.
Great. Any questions for Ryan? No?
I do just want to clarify that the discretionary authority is when council doesn't meet or doesn't meet quorum. That you
Well, I mean,
wouldn't,
it's not listed to that. I mean,
but you wouldn't override a no vote by council.
right.
Any other questions? No, thank you so much. Awesome. Okay, so we will put a consent item for that next week to approve those funding guidelines.
Actually, though, those guidelines were approved in June by the previous council, which is, I think, historically been done.
Okay, then no worries.
Actually, I believe the bylaws require that this council approve.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
The guidelines for all its funds.
Right.
So you'll want to go ahead and do a consent vote.
Great. Put a page up and consent votes are generally non-controversial, so great. Okay, and then our last special presentation is about one of our other office-specific funds within CAC, and it's the Arts Restored Community Fund. Serena, do you want to say anything before our presenter takes over?
No, this is my meeting, unfortunately, but I'm excited.
Okay, so presenter, if you want to talk a little bit about yourself and your presentation.
Yeah, I actually just shared it with Jessica.
Great.
So we should, I heard you know I said like 10 minutes ago. It was just a small presentation.
Oh, so it wasn't sent out earlier, the agenda stuff?
No, it wasn't. But yeah, in the meantime, I'll just introduce myself. So I'm taking over Brian's role as the ERC fund chair this year, and my previous experience in USAC or with the arts community here at UCLA is my first year I served on the board for the Chinese American Culture Night, and then my second year I served under the General Representative 2 office of Kayla as the International Development Director. So there I hosted actually 2 of my own events that help promote international and diversity at UCLA. And this is going to be, I'm going into my junior year here, and that's when I decided I want to take on a bigger role, and I looked at the ERC fund chair. So this is just a quick presentation about what the fund is. Okay, so some background about it. So following the ARC referendum passed 4 years ago, we were allocated $100,000 extra to provide for cultural and arts groups at UCLA. And that's way higher than what we had before, which is $15,000 in previous years. And what we saw was there was a much higher demand for student groups applying for these funds because they want to put on these cultural-oriented events and programs. So they applied for up to $50,000, but we were only able to offer $15,000. So that's why this referendum that was passed was great for us because we were able to meet that demand. So quickly, the funding guidelines. Student group organization must be registered with SOL. Each organization may only apply once per funding period, and one program is only allowed to apply once per academic year. So even though we have multiple funding periods, they can only apply for one program once a year. And recurring programs can apply more than once per year. And all applications must include documentation, estimates, and quotes allocated where the funds will be used for. And allocated funds must only be used for the program it was applied for. The programs must have cultural relevance, either by promoting cultural diversity, various cultures, or cultural awareness. And funds may be used to offset on our area or facilities expenses and supplies, which we'll get into a little bit. Yeah. So what is funded? Facility and venue costs, advertising, program supplies and equipment, printing, transportation, and honorarium. And what isn't funded? Retreats, food food, even though there may be exceptions. So it's on a case-by-case basis. T-shirts, and then items that are more temporary and not solely for the cultural program or event. So some events that we funded this past year, Indian Student Union, UCLA's Navrata Ross Gala, and there's like a huge list of them, like Thai Association Culture Night, most of the culture nights apply to this, Sola Acapella Spring Concert, and then, yeah, this is just a huge list. And the next slide, another really long list of programs that apply for this fund. So you can see that we cover a great gamut of different cultural events and programs at UCLA. And then this slide shows the trend of applicants is rising. So we probably will see a much higher number this year as well. So like one of my goals for this year is to make sure that people know more people know about this fund that's available for them to offset the expenses or the financial burdens they may face when they want to put on cultural events. So we probably expect to see this numbers rise. And then trend of group supplying, again, this is also increasing. And then trend of money requested, trend is also increasing. Yeah. If you guys have any questions? Cool.
And so when you look a member officially of CAP staff, or is this kind of more like an auxiliary position?
Yeah, this is an auxiliary position. It's under CAP and it's a board of its own. So we hold hearings like after the club applies for the fund, we hold hearings. That's when the whole board is involved in the decision.
And if students want to join the ARC board, do they just apply through you?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So we don't have all the board members in yet, so we should let it do something.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you being here. You're more than welcome to stick around if you'd like, but otherwise you're welcome. Head up, yeah. Get back to your Tuesday night. All right, so that concludes our special presentations. Again, we'll just add a consent item to approve the ARCF guidelines, and I'm sure if there's any other questions that come up, there are many folks who will be happy to answer that. We will go ahead and move on into officer member reports. So I will begin. As always, I have an appointments update for everyone. I think the most notable thing is that we are formally closing apps for eBoard and JBoard on Sunday night. So that's advertising the application. That'll be more heavily advertised on both the OP and the USAC Live Facebook page. And this is just for eBoard chair, not for the entire board, just the chair. And JBoard is the 2 justice positions that are available. So I should 99% have those for you by our next meeting. So just something to keep in mind. That's why I want to have our election code discussion tonight. They're also still open for the other 2 members of COM board, as well as the Community Service Mini Fund Chair and Committee, which is 5 appointments, and the USAC Media and Simplicity Chair, which is running all of our social media, so Robert and I don't have to. More than happy to, but I have to page that. So that's, if there's anyone that you know that's building the PR, media, great person to put in contact with. Anyone that's really into community service, fund allocations that you haven't already directed to CPC or CIC, please direct them to CIC Mini Funds. Really awesome. And then in terms of CPC, again, I was hoping to have both of those applicants for you all tonight, but one of our strongest applicants is currently in the United Arab Emirates, and apparently they blocked like Skype, FaceTime, Google Hangouts, all of those sorts of things. So we unfortunately haven't been able to interview her, and my appointment directors and I truly believe that everybody should have a chance to interview, especially if they're a really strong applicant like she is. So hopefully when she's back, we'll be able to bring her up somewhat soon for CPC, but at least that committee is mostly full after tonight's appointment. So that's the reason behind that. And then once fall quarter comes around, maybe end of September, we'll open up some of the other ones, but we are on track to having them filled by fall, so. And one other thing, a couple other things for me. I mentioned a couple weeks ago our internship interest form that has been posted in the Facebook That's been posted in the Facebook Class of 2022 page. So if you're in that page, hype it up, like it, whatever. I will share the results of that forum with, I think my internship directors will directly reach out to your internship directors. So we can start kind of disseminating information about applications when that comes around. But we're really excited about that. Already kind of having a forum circulating. My teams are working really hard. And the last thing for me, I know Jessica has some email about this, but True Brew and Welcome is coming up, really exciting. I have the privilege to be one of the students that's speaking at the large event at Hollywood Pavilion Sunday, I believe. And so I'm really, really looking forward to that, currently working on my speech, and I would really love to have as many of you there as possible to kind of see the show and be part of it. My freshman year was completely different than how it is now. It was like super small, and now they do a whole show with song and dance and a bunch of other students sharing their stories. It's going to be really, really incredible. So if you're free that Sunday, I believe it's September 23rd. I'll send more information when it gets closer, but would love to have you there. And that's it for me. So if IVP wants to go.
Yeah. True Brew and Welcome. We get some stuff going on too. During the opening week, 0 week enormous activities fair, I know Jessica's there. We had a call today about potentially getting IVP involved in some way and helping out with enormous activities fair. Fall quarter, kind of like what we did in the past with enormous activities fair spring quarter. So I'm looking forward to potentially working with OP, CEC, and other offices on hopefully having a stake in that. The other thing, campus safety that we're working on and getting ready for this upcoming year is I had a call with Marieka Turner today, who's the new health and well-being coordinator for residential life. We talked about her role in potentially joining a campus safety alliance. We sent out an email to all campus safety alliance members. Our intentions to reboot the alliance. As you all know, IVP for the past few years hasn't really held up its role of actually doing campus safety alliance. So we're trying to get that rebooted. And once again, I said this last time, I'm really looking forward to working with a bunch of different offices, including OP, I know GenRep 2, and other offices that are doing big things with safety as well, and hopefully moving forward with that. The last thing is I just wanted to thank everybody who helped out with the redistribution center teaser flyer that went out last week. That thing got shared hundreds of times across Facebook. It was a sea of purple and yellow. People were calling me annoyed and angry, but also calling me and expressing the fact that they got to see it and that they're excited that it's going to happen. So I just wanted to thank Office of the President, Internal Vice President, FFC, SWC, Facilities, and GenRep 2 for all of their help on this. We couldn't do it without all of you all, and I hope we can keep collaborating on projects like this in the future.
And I can never unsee the hats looking like spaceships, so thank you, Bella, for that one. Did you interest in anything you said?
Oh no, I was just saying, you should hit me up in regards to safety, because the Academic Affairs Commission does a lot of work with that in regards to the Police Chief Advisory Board, as well as the emergency preparedness that we did last year. So just something to think about.
Definitely, okay.
All right, we'll move into EVP. You okay? It's really painful. EVP.
Yes, hello. So this past weekend, we had the UC Student Organizing Summit, brought 36 people, a little bit of a logistical nightmare, but overall, people seem to be getting a lot out of the conference, and everyone was on the trip seemed to be bonding really well, which was kind of like great for you to see. I was elected as the UCSA UC We Vote campaign chair, so now you can reach out to me for like anything voting, so, or if you need like connections to other campuses. Also just a fun fact that I was excited about, I was the only person that got a unanimous win, so. And so one of the big things about this conference is that we decide the goals for the 4 UC wide campaigns. So for our choir campaign, that's centering around undocumented student experiences and basic needs. So depending on like what the needs are per campus, this will mean either securing resources for undocumented student programs, looking at financial aid tracks, and then also like securing food and housing. For Racial Justice Now, the goal is expanding access and retention centers across the UCs and securing more funds for those centers. For UC We Vote, it's to get 100,000 Get Out the Vote contacts. For context, that's like 10 times more than we did in 2016. So I'm being ambitious. And then for Fund the UC, it's to double our tuition rollback, so to get like another 120 off, and then also to get a ballot measure that would use bonds to restore facilities and like tackle our like $1 billion worth of deferred payments. And then some other updates is September 15th and 16th, there's going to be the Student Labor Organizing Conference. It's at UCLA. So if you're interested in learning more about like what our labor unions are doing and how you can get involved, and honestly, they're all just like crazy good grassroots organizers, so it's a really good way to learn about that. Those applications are coming out soon, so we'll like post, like watch the EVP page for that to be posted. We had 3 people from my office attended the UAW protest day at Berkeley Hall, because UC is not being very good with our UAW is the TA and the like readers and tutor union, and basically the situation right now is their housing costs have gone, so the graduate student housing has been increased by UCLA 5%, and then they're only trying to increase their wages by 3%, and there's not, the negotiations have been stalled. Also had a local lobby trip with Senator Portantino, talked about AB 3153, which is expanding Cal Grants to summer. 2836, which is about improving native repatriation efforts within the UC. If you're interested in gun reform, sexual harassment within Capitol offices, or suicide prevention, they gave us a bunch of bills that they're working on that I can like give you information about. Or if you're interested in co-program. Also, I'm going to Sacramento this Thursday to lobby around the repatriation bill, bringing the co-president of ASA, and I don't remember if I mentioned this last week, but there's 3 EVPs across the UC system who are Indigenous, so that's myself, the UC Santa Barbara EVP, and UC San Diego EVP. And then also, lastly, I posted this in the group meeting, but Jerry Brown announced his appointments for the regions. It's super important that we like dig into these people right now, because usually what happens is they'll get appointed, but they don't get approved for like a year. So UCSA will have like a year to kind of pressure them, make sure they're centering student interest. But Jerry Brown is trying to push their confirmation through within like the next month to assert his agenda before he gets out of office, which means that they would be approved before they even go through a Regents meeting. Also, the next Regents meeting is at UCLA during week 0, so we can, you know, definitely make some ruckus to them at that time. So check out the appointments, like research them, give me any like feedback about what you think about the people, because we do still have time within UCSA to like block their appointments. We definitely like get on that if there's anyone really problematic, which knowing Jerry Brown is. And yeah.
Do you say require or sitting notification?
Acquire.
Acquire, sorry.
It's an acronym, it's a long acronym.
Yeah.
I forget what it stands for.
And that's replacing sustainable students?
Yeah.
Got it.
Essentially.
Cool. Thank you so much. Okay, so our next officer member report is back. So, Emily, do you have a report?
All right, Julia couldn't make it today, so she asked me to give y'all a few updates. So the FAC appointments application is out on Facebook. We posted it to our Facebook page, and we're encouraging all of you to share it with your networks. The applications are going to be due on September 2nd. Also, one more thing, our Access on Board project team, which focuses on fixing infrastructure issues to make campus more accessible to students with disabilities. They've created a survey and have posted it in a bunch of different Facebook groups and also on our Facebook page. And they're surveying students with disabilities to find out how their disabilities influence their experiences at UCLA. And their answers are helping us plan a town hall, I think hopefully fall quarter. I'm not too sure on the specifics of that, but we'll be having a town hall focused on improving campus infrastructure for disabled students. And on top of this, we're also planning a disability visibility campaign to bring attention to the experiences of students on campus with disabilities, which we're gathering from the survey. And I'm sure as this project continues to move further along, Julia will have more updates for you. And that's it from FAC right now.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Emily, and thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Okay. And then the last one is CAP. Serena, do you have a report?
No, I don't. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, and then admin reps.
Nothing this week. Just a couple updates from the email that I sent, I think, last week. So there's some potential partnership opportunities if anybody's interested in working with either True Brew and Welcome, or there's also another initiative, the De-Stress Study Fest that the Transfer Student Center hosted last year. They're trying to make it more of a campus-wide effort to like host a calendar of events that are happening all over campus. And so since USAC, a lot of offices you all do your own initiatives during finals week for de-stressing activities. If there's any interest in either partnering with a department, or if you want to promote your activities through their master calendar, just let me know and I can get you involved with them. Mm-hmm.
So in regards to the True Brew and Welcome, what is the kind of like range of possibilities for us? Is it like a poly thing, or is it just the whole week? I have a friend who wants to promote kind of zero waste, and he has like a speaker / wants to like get some sort of like programming in for the new freshmen. Where would I kind of direct it?
So in terms of that, I don't know of anything going on currently, like any program that's already on the list of activities for that week to kind of partner with. But if you want to send him my email, I can try to get more information and see like if there's another space that could kind of do that. And if anything, definitely recommend him to apply to TGIF when fall quarter comes around, because that sounds like a really cool event that TGIF would probably fund. But in terms of True Brew and Welcome, so it's a lot of different events that are going on all 0 week, and it's a lot of different departments on campus. It's like a campus-wide thing. It's happening on the Hill. It's happening on campus. The two main things that council's kind of involved in are Brew and Bash and EAF. But specifically, the True Brew and Welcome Committee expressed some interest in doing some sort of like open house or like tour of USAC spaces or offices, just to kind of like get new students to meet council members and kind of understand what USAC is as they're coming in. So I don't know how you all feel about that. If that's something you're interested in, it's definitely up to you all if you want to participate in something like that. That was just something that they kind of requested that they thought would be cool to do. And if you would be interested in doing some sort of like open house, we can definitely give you like a venue to do that, so that you don't have to like be in your offices or like be in here. And even if it's not all of council, if just like a couple offices are interested in doing something like that, you can let me know. That was sort of like the main thing that they had reached out with interest in. But in terms of like anything else going on that week, I know they do a lot of like information booths throughout campus that new students can ask questions if they're lost or just need extra help. So I think that they usually staff those with volunteers. So if anybody would be interested in like volunteering, I can try to get you a connection to somebody who's coordinating that. But yeah, it's basically like most of the events are already kind of set on their calendar, so they're not really adding new events. They're just kind of interested in like sort of like ongoing throughout the week involvement. So if there's any interest, and I mean, you all do the enormous activities fair anyway, and you'll each have a table there as well, so you'll have a space to kind of like meet students and let them know about what your offices do. But if you wanted to do an additional sort of like just USAC, because EAF is like everybody on campus, just let me know. We can kind of like try to coordinate that.
I would love to be a part of that if that's something that other folks are interested in. I'm like happy to live in my office as well, because it's fairly large, but probably not large enough for all of us. So.
Yeah,
fairly large.
Yeah, just
yeah. Yeah, true.
Other than that, I can't think of any updates off the top of my head, but probably if you have questions, have anything.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Gilliam. Okay, our next item on the agenda is contingency programming. So Ryan.
So for this week, only one organization applied. The total required was $982.95. Of that, they requested $734.52, and we recommended $700 for their allocation.
Any questions for Ryan regarding the allocation? Okay, is there a motion to approve contingency programming for the week?
Motion to approve contingency program.
Great. So non-USAC activities. Thank you, Julie. Okay, we'll move into a vocal roll call vote beginning with IDP.
Yes.
EP?
Yep.
General 1?
Yes.
General 2 stepped out. AAC?
Yes.
CAC? CAC?
Serena?
Yes.
SWC?
Yes.
TSR?
Yes.
Great, by a vote of 7 to 0 to 0, the motion passes and the contingency programming allocation of $700 is approved. Wonderful. Okay, we don't have any old business on the agenda.
Claire?
Yeah.
Quick question. Along with the contingency things, one of the things I got this week was the bylaw change that gives the FICOM vice chair increased access. Has that been voted on or put on?
No, so that was supposed to be coming up this week, but I don't see it on the agenda, but I had sent it to Robert Wall for the deadline, so.
Okay, so if I could make one additional suggestion for when it does come forward, changing the name of CSP to Seoul. Center for Student Programming is now Seoul. It's now the Seoul office.
Okay.
You can have that.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that something we'd be able to have a vote on this week because it was sent or
I think it's on the agenda, bylaw recommendation.
Well, we still have to edit that
That's
section.
code.
So that was
Yes, it wasn't on the agenda. That's interesting. Okay.
It's definitely in the attachments.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, this doesn't have to be done tonight, I can do the next meeting, that's fine.
Are you sure? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so.
Because it's a bylaw change, not just a guideline change, that will be an action item, not just a consent item.
Right.
I think so by virtue of it being an action, we send it out to 9, right?
It goes out with the, with the next agenda.
Yeah, so next Tuesday, send it out, and then it'll be on the agenda for next.
I'm so sorry. Sent an email, I'm sorry, guys, I just. I will double check with Robert next time. Okay, so we will just table that then for next meeting. Okay, we'll move into new business. So the first is just a consent item approval vote of the supplemental funds for service guidelines that were presented last week by Bethany. So the way the consent items work is I'll just ask if there's any opposition. If not, the consent item passes. If so, we can have a discussion and then move into a more traditional roll call vote. So, is there any opposition to the supplemental funds for service guidelines?
Can we see her? Or did she send them out already?
She presented last Tuesday. The presentation was sent out with attachments. I think Robert sent it out.
Thanks.
Does anyone have Advil?
Yes. Okay. Do you want to wait to the end of the meeting so you can review them? Or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Sure. Okay, so we'll just table that until after our discussion. Okay, so obviously it was very important to members of council, including Robert and myself, to have this discussion about election code. It was something that we wanted to have earlier on, but due to kind of our packed agendas with all the appointments and the 6-hour meetings that we all remember fondly, we decided to put that on the agenda for this week, mostly because, as I told you, it's my intention to bring an election board chair before you all next meeting, and I would like to have some sort of list of recommendations from all of council that we can hand to whoever that appointment may be on day one, because as we've all discussed, we are going to be doing a complete overhaul of election code, a complete rewrite from scratch. Dr. Geller will be part of the conversations, I will be part of the conversations, election boards, SOL, et cetera, all the relevant stakeholders. There's also another stakeholder that I wanted to introduce, who isn't on the list tonight, but is a really great resource for us. Her name is Michelle Moyer, and she's the Director of Business Affairs and Compliance under ASUCLA. Jessica can put you in contact with her, or I can. And she's just a really great resource in terms of internal ASUCLA regulations, anything regarding election code or anything else that comes up through the year that might require some sort of counsel or legal opinion on. So would really, really encourage anyone to reach out to Michelle. We kind of reach out to her for some input as well, but that's a resource that does exist if you do want some sort of external, but still ASU specific opinion. Do you have anything? Yeah.
Oh, well, just, she would also be willing to come to any meeting, so if you feel like you're having a discussion where you want her to be present, as long as she has a heads up, I'm sure she wouldn't mind coming to a meeting as well.
Okay, so I have a document I'll share with all of you after tonight's meeting. It just has a couple things that we talked about last time. This was briefly brought up. Those were having the election board kind of independent from USAC, so not someone coming directly from USAC offices. And the other recommendation was some sort of defined rubric for what the violations were and what the accompanied penalties or sanctions or whatever you want to call them would be. So what warrants 10 hours, what warrants 30 minutes, what warrants disqualification, etc. So that way there's no kind of unclear situation that happened in the past. So I'm just going to open up the floor for any discussion, any ideas for election code related things. This is something that we can keep working on this document in the weeks to come as well. Hope to have some sort of version to hand to the election board chair, but obviously I'll be in constant contact with whoever that might be. So this can be a document that for sure evolves and changes, but I wanted to make sure that, well, it's not 1 a.m. and we've been thinking about this for a while, it's still fairly fresh in our minds. We can have a conversation about this. So with that, does anybody have any things that they want to see on the recommendation list, any opinions, concerns, etc.?
There should be restrictions on like, for instance, if a slate or an individual like violates like something small like a social media post, or like they're being sanctioned because like other supporters who aren't a part of their campaign team like posted, like they shouldn't lose a day, maybe like 3 hours, maybe 2 hours. Like their infraction should be proportional to like the punishment that they have. Also like the absence of giveaways. I don't think that giveaways are fair when you have a limited amount of what you can do, and also like it gives them a lot of fruit. Like the election code itself already gives like candidates like additional funding opportunities with regards to the slate. If you have multiple people on your slate, then you can like share your funds. So like the absence of giveaways, I feel like presents a more equal opportunity for all candidates. And then in regards to the election code, there are so many different things that we're but even still, like, is there like a chart? Not a chart. Because I also feel like it should be, at least in terms of like everything should kind of be cohesive amongst the chair as well as the committee or even the ad hoc committees that they compose during the election season. And in regards to like, if we're going to give the chair some level of discretion, like there has to be some type of specification of what those powers are and what that is discretion now, outlines.
A small one that the last e-board recommended getting rid of is like the ban on the use of bad materials. You can't get stickers.
Also, this is what I want to say at the beginning, but just to bring up kind of as a guideline, obviously elections can bring up a lot of emotions, a lot of experiences for a lot of us, so just please be, not that I worry that you'll not be or that I won't be, but please remember to be respectful of kind of the sensitive nature of this conversation and try to keep things general instead of pointed at specific individuals that may or may not have engaged in certain contexts, specific slates, etc. And with that being said, one thing that I wanted to bring up too, this is something that I talked about some of you already. I personally think that there's kind of a gray area right now in election code about whether or not slates should be held accountable for the actions of one individual. And it was something that was brought up kind of what we were just said, like whether or not one person, right, is like posting on social media, should the entire state be held accountable for that?
Yeah, I want to address that. There are two things that are actually not just a violation of policy, but violation of law. And when you start to interfere with someone's ability to affiliate with others, that is a violation of First Amendment. So the ways that plays out, the election code cannot allow different funding maximums based on whether someone is part of a slate or not. Also, you cannot sanction an individual for the behaviors of other individuals. So if someone on a slate violates what's considered prohibited behavior in the election code, that person can be sanctioned, not the entire slate. Otherwise, you are you're interfering with the ability to affiliate with others. So those may be the kinds of conversations that you want to have with Michelle to get a good understanding of how the election code and your use of slates can be done in a way that's consistent with the right to free association. But we need to be careful that there isn't something written into the policy that actually would be crossing that line.
One of the things, just like, one of the concerns I have with like always framing it with that with slates is like, sometimes I honestly felt like I was being punished for not associating with people because I was in a position where I had to like buy all of my t-shirts from scratch, going up against like people who had this ability to buy way more t-shirts than I could. Like I had to hand stamp all of my flyers because there was just so much shared resource that was going on that like it felt like punishment to be running independent. And so
and you don't have to allow slates, but if you do, you can't penalize the members for the behavior of other members.
Yeah, that's what we're saying that was lacking in the election code this year, or that allowed loopholes. Because election code, well, not election code, but the election board did sanction like whole slates for the behaviors of like singular members. And like everyone in the state, I think if for virtue of them being associated with one another, they should all be notified of the sanction of that particular person who's performed the infraction. So I feel like that distinction should be apparent. But again, like every candidate should be kind of held accountable to their own actions, not necessarily that of not necessarily that of the entire slate. Also, another thing that happened in the election code with regards to, like, if we're talking about resources that are expendable, so there was a limited amount which we could have shared amongst like slates. So like if each person had to have like about like each candidate was able to have like $600, like, but you had to, it was mandated that you report if you were like it was mandated that you report which resources you were sharing amongst candidates, and like that was just like something that was done. So we can also think about that in terms of like what does it look like if we're giving out things, like what things are we allowing ourselves to give out beyond just the form of information, like making sure that we're staying clear of bribery. Like in some ways, almost like mirroring how elections go at large, where you're giving out information materials. If it's a sticker, it's attached to a sign, it's attached to these are our platforms, like these are flyers, as opposed to like things that like people could need that would like, or not even need, just like novelty items that would like influence people or bribe them into like voting for you versus like the texture of why you're actually voting, because of your platforms, because of your initiative, because of your vision that you have for us as the topics. That would be like the waste.
So that's something that we can definitely consider what can and can't be or should or shouldn't be funded with money.
Do you mind if I add something?
Please.
So, I mean, yeah, just a few of my thoughts that came up during this conversation was for Dr. Geller, I had a kind of two clarifying questions. With like the punishing slate members for an action of an individual, I think like my confusion lies with this. If there's an individual on a slate who is, for whatever reason, violating campaign code for publicizing voting for that slate. So if I'm an individual, not just saying vote for me, but vote for my slate, the benefit that is being taken from that, violation benefits the entire slate. It doesn't just benefit that individual. So from my understanding, like like in the real world, not the real world, outside of UCLA, if the Democratic Party, if an individual within the Democratic Party or the Republican Party commits a violation that benefits the party as a whole, the party is punished as a whole. If that's not correct, because the benefit didn't just impact that individual, it impacted the party. So if that was the case, would that then change the precedent of it calling in the legality of not being able to punish a slate for the actions of an individual? Or do you know if you have an answer for that yet necessarily?
So I'm not actually sure what you're referencing. In general public non-student elections, there is very little that's done to punish a candidate or a party. There's no one who steps in and says, oh, candidate, you did something inappropriate. You have to refrain from campaigning for some period of time. Someone might be removed from running for office, but there aren't really sanctions the way you have sanctions.
Oh, yeah, I was referencing more so like the ability to take legal action against a party as a whole, kind of, in that sense.
Sanctions should be about not benefits. Sanctions should be about violations. So what you're going to want to do is, in rewriting the code, make it clear these are a list of all the prohibited behaviors. Violate these behaviors, and there will be consequences. And then list what the possible consequences are. It's not necessarily going to be a direct link, where if you engage in behavior A, you will incur sanction B. There's always some room for the specifics of the circumstance, but sanctioning should be based on the violations, not based on benefits.
Okay. If I could ask a clarifying question again. So if we were to punish an individual that was on a slate for a violation, and let's say that we were to come up with a new code that somehow, like, for example, deducted votes or something from, I guess, like, in that case, would the votes just be deducted from that individual's count, not the slate as a whole, even though the slate benefited from the violation?
So I'm not even going to try and address the idea of deducting votes. I don't think disenfranchising voters is going to be an option that Michelle would support.
I guess just like as an analogy, I guess is what I'm thinking.
So I'm going to, just for argument's sake, go a little more extreme and say maybe the sanction is disqualification because votes have not been counted yet. And you consider a violation severe enough to disqualify a candidate. You would be disqualifying the one who engaged in the prohibited behavior, not an entire slate. Yeah. Just as if someone who was running without a slate, if a supporter did something inappropriate that might have benefited them, you would not sanction that independent candidate. You would not disqualify that independent candidate because of a third party's behavior.
Yeah, and I think like your first question when you asked her like, okay, like if one person, a part of the state does something and like they're talking about voting, like does the whole state like get like punished for that in regards to like them advocating or lobbying or like, you know, promoting that slate even though that they are infringed on? I think it's more so that specific person would be the person who gets a sanction. Election board would sanction them. They would then like lose their rights to campaign or a social media campaign or on the foot campaign for like X amount of hours as opposed to the entire slate. And if they themselves, by virtue of trying to benefit the slate, right, still violated the sanction, then they would be imposed on another sanction. Now, ultimately, if they were like, let's say there's another instance where they violate a sanction and then like the election board, for whatever reason, decides to disqualify them, they then become a part of the commoners or like the common fabric of UCLA, and then they still have the freedom to then support or rally or do whatever they want for that said slate. So it's not like it's going to be inhibiting or, you know, or even like the punishment or sanction would be disproportionate to the violation, because it wouldn't truly impact the slate as well. It's, I mean, at large, I mean, potentially if that person was ahead or had a stake in like actually securing a seat on council, I mean, maybe the party would lose a seat, but overall in terms of sanctioning, it wouldn't hurt the slate at large.
So I guess my concern isn't what would hurt the slate necessarily at large. I guess my concern stems more from if you run by yourself, essentially, if a person that's on your campaign or associated with you does something and they violate code, your campaign as a whole is targeted, basically, or not targeted, but it's punished. So I'm wondering, like, if there's it kind of reverses the benefit you won from that you got from that violation. So if you're on a slate and there's an individual that I guess is like, that they individually are the only one committing the violation, but it's impacting all of the slate and benefiting all of the slate, I guess I'm just like, I'm struggling to grasp with how we can not necessarily like reverse that impact, but somehow like mitigate the fact that that helped other candidates too that might be on that slate. I just don't know the solution, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
From an equity perspective, the description you just gave, I would similarly say, no, you can't sanction the candidate who's running independently for actions of a third party. That's just as inappropriate as sanctioning one member of a slate for the actions of another member of a slate. So I think it's something where we don't have to have answers tonight. What we need is a commitment that those involved in writing the draft code will consult with your council and will play out the scenarios of the things you would like to see happen to find a way to do it that is consistent with law rather than in conflict. And what that's going to be, the good news with starting this early is you have time before there are elections.
To address kind of what Robert said, just from like a poli-sci game theory perspective. So say you have a slate, one individual of the slate does something against election code, but it benefits or it publicizes the slate, gaining the slate like 3 points in game theory. By maybe putting a sanction on that individual, the gain that the individual gave the slate will be reversed when the individual is sanctioned, because they will be able to give the entire slate that +3 that it would have given. So that the individual being punished is no longer giving the slate that benefit. Just to kind of reverse what.
Just also like a note, because like I think Robert, more what you might be thinking about rather than like a party perspective is like if you have a board, there's an individual on the board that does something that like could get the board like sued. Like that's a thing like with UCSA, like we have a fiduciary responsibility, so if someone acts like fiscally egregious, then like the whole board is at jeopardy. But because there is no like legal responsibility of these slates that makes it in a way that the board is kind of responsible as a whole, I definitely like understand that like sentiment. And like we can work out the specifics on like, oh well, like you still use the slate name if you're advertising for yourself, or like the just like you can't use individual's name to sanction, like I think that's stuff that can be worked out a lot more in committee. But I would say that like generally there's a concept that like, yeah, overall, like the legality of it just isn't really holding up.
Right, and I think we underestimate the power of the public. Like, for instance, if from a member of a slate, if a member of someone's campaign does something exceptionally horrendous, like people more typically will like have that reflect in the vote turnout. So, and I mean, I think in previous elections, we've seen that kind of like manifest itself in regards to that nature. In regards to like also like election code, like sanctioning folks because like are specifically individuals, based on the behavior of someone within their team, it's usually the slate manager that, if it's someone that, or not the slate manager, but like their campaign manager that's like registered for them as an independent candidate outside of themselves, if it's not that person that is doing the infraction or the wrongdoing, then there's kind of no way to sanction it. It would be on the responsibility of the candidate to either deal with the supporter in the way that they see fit, understanding that that may or may not have been hurting their campaign, or if it was like distasteful in their regard.
I think like that's where my like discrepancy lies, in the sense that if a person running by themselves were to have a person on their campaign do some sort of infraction, the campaign, if basically on an independent campaign or somebody running by themselves, the campaign would be sanctioned in the status quo under the current election code. Whereas if an individual that was on a slate that wasn't running, that wasn't running with the slate were to to commit an infraction, it kind of gets complicated, because if they were just posting a photo of one person on that slate and somehow doing an infraction or something, then who in that situation would even get, I guess, quote unquote, punished? Because it sounds like you can't punish the party in this situation, but then you also can't really punish any group of individuals like you could on an independent campaign, in the sense that an independent campaign would be, for example, banned from campaigning or banned from social media posts. You couldn't do that on a party line, because it would be attacking the whole party essentially for an individual's actions.
Yeah.
So I think that's where my problem lies, in the sense that not necessarily candidates committing infractions, but people working on those campaigns, and there being a discrepancy of how those things are handled. And obviously I don't expect there to be a solution tonight. I just definitely wanted that to be something that we were thinking about.
Absolutely, Robert. The goal is equity. It's, you need to be sure that whether there's a slate or an independent, that there is not an inequitable situation where someone can be sanctioned for the behavior of others. That needs to be exactly the same for independent and slate affiliated candidates. The goal is equity.
And I think that might not even be a problem with slates. I think that might just be a problem with how independent campaigns or people running individually are currently in the status quo punished for their actions. So like I said, it's a broader conversation, and I don't even know the answer. It's just definitely something that's been in the back of my mind.
Yeah, something to certainly be aware of, so that whatever you all come up with is something that treats everyone fairly and equitably, regardless of the choice to run independently or with a slate.
I feel like this is something that could be continued in the Constitutional Review Committee. I don't want to kind of keep beating this. I want to throw it out there.
A different topic. I guess Dr. Geller. So what are the kind of Title IX preparations for the election board and its committee? Is it the same as we kind of did at the council table with the presentation, or is it under an ASUCLA employee training, or what's that?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. If you're asking about what kind of training the committee will get, you certainly, as council, can direct that the members of the committee receive supplemental training on the university's Title IX policies and procedures. We're glad to provide that if that's something council decides they would like to see. Anyone who is stipended, goes on payroll, becomes an employee, really should get the same training that you've had. And so once you get all your offices staffed and you've identified which are stipended positions through your offices or the USAC committees, we can schedule times that'll work for the students and make that happen.
And I guess in addition to that, perhaps a complaint is filed that has something to do in the same kind of conversation as a sexual harassment complaint, kind of those sort of complaints not being the entire burden of the election board, like of students who are not, capable of kind of meddling with that, but having a Title IX employee come in, something that could look into for that.
I would agree with that. Sexual harassment is not within the purview of election board to determine. That would be something that they would need to refer to Title IX.
And also, another thing that I'll add is something that election code, CRC, whoever it is, can discuss is which areas of campus and the surrounding area are permitted to campaign. I know there was some interest in exploring whether or not apartments should be available for campaigning, whether or not Westwood, whether or not fraternities, sororities, whatever you want to say, should be accessible for campaigning. And those are one of the things that's, again, difficult to limit in some ways, especially those that are like privately owned and not university-owned property, but I definitely think it's worth exploring whether it makes sense or is correct to be campaigning in some of those places.
I mean, yeah, that's something that, I was just going to quickly say is kind of like with Res Life. I know like it's like kind of like the honor system in the sense of if you get reported, you get reported, right? And you're kind of, you're done. It's a violation. So maybe if we were to talk about something like that, like in Westwood and off-campus apartments, I don't know if like a similar system could apply where if like you have some sort of burden of evidence or something that you did it, that it would just be a violation if it were to be banned.
I guess the election board chair could like make a conversation with us or give like a presentation on their perspective, and you could all just discuss, give their suggestions. So don't have to hammer it all out to me. Absolutely, yeah. This is going to be an ongoing conversation for sure. I just wanted to have some base level things the election board chair to begin to work on, and things that we can ask for about appointment might be about their perspective at next meeting. And my appointment instructors and I can ask them as well in their interview. Yes, yeah, about the election board chair. Another thing too is, and this is more our list too, but what it means necessarily that council gets to certify election results. Does that mean that council reads it and that's it, or does that mean that council has the authority to approve or disapprove?
With all the hearings and stuff that were going on.
That was their interpretation last year, but I don't know how the interpretation holds year to year. And I know that they had some questions too about like, in the event there's a complaint against USAC, who's USAC's representative, because that's what happened last time, and there was kind of a disjunction that says in the bylaws the president, but it wasn't the president. And then also they interpreted to mean that it would have to be like voted on by council, but that's not necessarily something that has to go moving forward. I guess that can be changed in the bylaws or in our code. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Sorry. There's just one interpretation.
That's okay. Those 4 weeks were all great.
Can I add something?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, just on like not like slightly different lines, I think I brought it up last time when we briefly talked about this in terms of like election board chair. Just like ideas about like whether we want someone who's not been a part of USAC offices before, whether we want someone who's already served on election board. In the past, typically, like not like it's just like something that just would just happen year over year. Just as a part of election board, what I was told is if you've been on election board, only then you apply to be chair the next year, and that's how it used to happen. Like ever since like a couple of years before even my freshman year. Or the last 2 years apart from like before Jack Price's appointment. So just like how everyone feels about the fact that whether someone who's been a part of, let's say, USAC campaign should be, I don't know, like should there be some sort of restriction of being involved with a certain, I don't know how that's going to play out because it was never like by law mandated that you had to not be a part of an office, but it was just like something that typically followed that you serve 1 year as like a member or a director, like a member of election board. And once you get a hang of like how things work, that's when you typically apply to be chair next year. So does that make any sense?
Yeah. And how do you all feel about that as I'm going through this appointment? Would you all like to see someone with election board experience? Would you like to see someone with no ties to elections, someone that's never been in USAC, someone that has been in USAC. Kind of have a whole gamut of applicants to be transparent. So,
I feel like we need somebody independent, unless it's like Isabel. And I only use that say that because she was able to make decisions, but also be vocal when people like ask questions, when council asks questions of her, or of Jack, or any person on the election board. So I feel like, because I think she graduated already, but I really feel like we should just have somebody that's like independent, that can kind of just like, that's independent of us, our parties, our affiliations, and can really just use a really good judgment call. Someone that's also familiar with, like, you know, for example, like Deb and like other people in regards to, like, you know, making sound decisions.
I completely agree with the independent. Like, I'd love to see someone that was like a complete USAC outsider, but I'm concerned with kind of what Dr. Geller said, is this First Amendment, like freedom of association, us denying someone the spot because of their previous associations. I worry about us getting into, we're discriminating against someone because they have in their past chosen to affiliate with a party of independent office. How do we circumvent that?
I'm wondering if that would necessarily apply in this case, in the sense that there's like commissions, for example, in the federal government that do have regulations on partisanship and do have regulations on like party affiliation, for example, to join those commissions. So I mean, Dr. Geller, do you have insight into if that would be the case in this situation?
I think you're probably safe looking for someone who's not affiliated with any prior campaign, but that would mean not just Slate affiliated, but not affiliated with prior campaigns either. If you're, but you, regardless of how you write out the desired qualifications, when it comes to the interviews, you can use your judgment to find someone who you genuinely believe for each of those offices will be independent, objective, fair, and balanced.
Absolutely, yeah, like maybe instead of like a requirement, but like a preference for someone who hasn't worked in a USAC office within the last year.
And that's been part of the conversations that my directors and I have been having. I'm just curious. I'm more so curious as to whether or not we would like to see someone with e-board experience, or we would like to see someone with a fresh perspective. I mean, and that's a judgment call that I'll make and that my team will make, but I'm interested if y'all have any insight. Or, I mean, I should say, I guess it was precedent in the past to have folks with past with past e-board experience, but I don't know how important that is. But in terms of the independent, that's not something that I don't think anyone needs to worry about. I don't have an intention of appointing someone that's been super heavily involved in campus politics for this position, so don't worry about that.
Prior experience can prove to either be a benefit or a detriment, depending on how the person approaches the role. So rather than advocating for one or the other, I would encourage, through your interview process, you know, look for what is the person going to bring. And are they going to adhere to the same values that you as a council want them to have? Are they going to respect that other than sanctioning, there is very little they are empowered to do, that everything else they do is recommendations to you, and you as council make the decisions?
Yeah, sorry. Do you want to finish?
Please.
I was just gonna say, like I feel like I generally value experience, but I was also like incredibly dissatisfied with the past election board, and so I wouldn't necessarily say that their experience on last year's board impresses me. And so I agree that like it should come out in the interview process as more like what their actual, like they should show extreme familiarity with the code, but I don't think that inherently has to come from like working on the board.
I mean, if I could add something too, I was just going to say that I think, you know, if we're going to step away, and whoever you choose, Claire, I mean, if we're going to step away from any affiliation with e-board or campaigns, I think just the biggest thing for me personally is just, you know, explaining why you chose them outside of that and what qualifications they have, in the sense that, like, making sure they have some sort of familiarity with like even just broad and general elections and how they operate, and some understanding of that, even outside of USAC. So, I mean, that's really like the important thing I'm looking for. But I personally agree with Aisha too, that I think I lean more towards the independent side of things as well, in the sense of not having affiliation with any USAC campaigns.
Yeah, and to add on to that, this will come in, specificities later, but for example, someone on e-board was in my sorority. Is that an affiliation with someone in USAC? And like that was taken to like levels of speculation. So clearing a guideline for like what is affiliation and what is just happen to be in like path with someone, and like 6 degrees of separation for everyone on this campus. It's probably plausible.
Absolutely. Well, again, I mean, when I'm making the appointment, I'll be sure to be, and this is an appointment that my team and I are not taking with you at all. We normally interview our applicants for about 30 minutes, and I may or may not be present. These, we're going to be interviewing each of them for an hour, and I will be present in every single one. So this will be very, very extensive. And if after the interviews I don't feel confident in any of the applicants, then we'll extend the deadline. I have no issue with doing that through September. I would like to get a chair appointed before school starts, but luckily we have still another month and a half or so. So know that I won't bring someone to you unless they have my full confidence. The same goes for JBoard, but eBoard especially. And JBoard, of course, the categorical independence is very important. Okay, yeah, as things come up, please feel free to add into documents, send them my way. Once you all with the chair in, I'm sure they'll appreciate constant communication as well. This is just an ongoing conversation. I just thought a baseline of recommendations again would be really positive. So any last thoughts before we kind of move toward adjournment? Yeah, right.
I think in the previous election cycle, they earmarked 10% of their budget to reimburse candidate expenses. Looking at the budget report right now, it doesn't look like anyone utilized that money. And I just want to like maybe as a reminder to be thinking about the budget, because there is wiggle room. Did you guys all?
Yeah, we haven't picked up our checks yet, so they're actually still at, most of them are still at student government accounting.
Okay. So even beyond that, just thinking about their budget and maybe repurposing some of the advertising money that wasn't used, because it looked like a lot of it was not used. And I don't know if it would be, plausible, but even using some of the surplus money to try and fully fund, USAC, all the campaigns, because I know there was a lot of concerns about, individuals' financial liability and being able to provide all of the expenses that go with money. So just, again, something to think about.
Okay, and with that, we will go ahead and close the discussion, but again, it remains ongoing. Do we feel ready to take a consent item vote on the supplemental funds for service guidelines? Did you feel ready to take a vote on? Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's a consent item. I'm just going to ask if there's any opposition. I'm just going to ask her online. Give them a minute to respond. Okay, last call for any opposition. All right, so the supplemental funds for service guidelines pass as a consent item. And we'll do a similar process for contingency and ARCF next week. And hopefully we will have the same process with the rest of our funding bodies as the summer comes to a close. Great. And with that, Brian can just send around the attendance sheet, and I will adjourn this meeting at 9:14 p.m. Any extra USAC announcements, things people wanted to bring up before we get to good and welfare?
Hi, say Pakistan has a new prime minister, and I'm really happy about it. So just wanted to share that.
And congratulations to your dad. Congratulations. That's so awesome. Okay, then we'll move into good welfare.